So it's almost like a roller coaster. Parts of it is really fun, parts of it is really scary, but usually when you get off the ride, most people enjoy it. So it's all perspective.
Welcome back, Passive Investor, where we are going on our next adventure with Anna Tan. Today, we are powered by commercial real estate. Anna is a wife, mom, W 2 worker, and multifamily syndicator, where she owns and operates several apartment buildings in Central Texas across Dallas and Houston. She's the real deal. She's actually doing it. She's living the life. She's balancing all of that with motherhood and figuring out all of the things you need to know to run a multifamily business and how to make decisions on what's a good investment and what would be a good investment for her to make on behalf of her investors, her passive income partners. The discussion we get into gets pretty technical on time management, balancing your lifestyle so that you can get everything done that you need to get done. And more importantly, how to balance your past, present, and future, learning from your past, reflecting on it while you're trying to manage everything that you have to do in the present, while at the same time not sacrificing the present for that future reward of the passive income and the passive income lifestyle and those adventures, being able to shave off some of that future benefit to enjoy life today, because life is short. Sometimes it can be unexpectedly short, and just being able to recognize that we don't have unlimited time and we don't have unlimited future allows us to figure out how we can enjoy life today while still being able to put up enough for tomorrow. So I know that many of you out there are going to relate to what Anna and I are talking about with just getting everything done and still being able to enjoy the journey. Like we said in there, it's like a roller coaster where we're on there because it's fun, even though sometimes it can be a little bit scary. So tune in to Anna just sharing how she gets it all done and how she is building her passive income lifestyle. I know you're going to get a lot of great tips and some really good inspiration from one mom to another, no matter what kind of lifestyle you're living, on how to balance the stresses from the present, the lessons from the past, and the promise of the future so that you can always enjoy today. Today, we have Anna Tan with us. She is with Suitelife Multifamily. They invest in multifamily units in Dallas and Houston. And Anna and I are going to talk a little bit about what it's like to actually be in the middle of being an entrepreneur in a commercial real estate business and what that looks like as opposed to maybe what we might think it looked like before we started, and just get real about this passive income lifestyle and what it takes to go from 9 to 5 to basically being retired on your passive income at whatever age you want that to happen. So thank you so much for being with us today, Anna.
Thank you so much, Emma. Love having the opportunity to be on your show.
Yeah, I appreciate it because I feel like when we were just talking in the pre-show part where we're just chatting about what life is like and what we're up to, there are so many things that you said that I relate to, between running a business, having kids, having the passive income dream, and just really going off the beaten path, while at the same time you have the short-term concerns of having a job, keeping the lights on, who's paying for the groceries and the gas, because that's all of us are what we are balancing between the W-2 or the 9 to 5 lifestyle before we can retire on our passive income. And especially if you want to retire early on your passive income, it can be a real challenge to balance the short term with the long term. So would love to hear more from you about what that looks like. How would you start a little bit with your background, introduce yourself, and just tell us where you started and the turning point that you had where you realized, hey, I need out of the rat race. How am I going to do that, until basically where you are today?
Yeah. So I say that I'm on the 222 plan. So that means that I'm still working the W-2. I have two jobs, and more importantly, I have two kids. But we actually started into real estate about 10 years ago, and we started in the residential space where we acquired and operated and managed those properties. And we still have that small portfolio today. Fast forward 10 years, one, we went through a huge learning curve to understand how to even, one, run a business, two, how to do it in the real estate realm. And then if any of listeners are have any association with real estate, you understand that there's a lot of facets to it. So fast forward 10 years, and today we are currently focusing on commercial real estate, specifically multifamily or apartments. We found that through that avenue, you can actually have properties and still have passive income, and you don't have to manage the day-to-day stuff. I like to tell this story that in our early years of being a property manager, One of our tenants left us a lovely surprise in the form of a German roach infestation.
Yeah.
And that was not fun. And I think that we pretty much lost between 4 or 5 months of income that year just due to the timing of everything. And it's just something that we were young, we didn't have kids, we had a lot of time and energy to do that. But now that we're in the later stages of our lives where we have two kids, we don't have time to manage that. Like one, I don't have the capacity to one, I don't even want to get close to roaches after that experience. But two, like you don't have to do that through an apartment syndication. And both you and I understand, at least from that perspective, that's worth considering if one, you don't want to get into real estate. Two, you don't want to learn how to get into real estate. You can learn at least the deal that you enter and enter real estate in that form.
So that makes me think about the progression that someone has between working for your money to managing the people who are working for your money to just passively having money come in with somebody else completely taking care of it. So in property management, we say we're managing the manager when we're managing the asset, but we don't have to deal with the cockroaches. It's like early on, your total DIY. I don't talk about this a whole lot, but when I was in college, I did pest control sales and I actually had to become a licensed pest control technician in Texas. So I lived in Dallas for a couple of months and we went into some situations that would make horror movies, like hoarders with German cockroaches. I spent so much time when I was getting my license doing German treatments, doing termite treatments, just down there with the techs so that I could really understand the product that I was selling. And that's what you do as a young person doing some DIY and basically getting into that. So when I took over my small portfolio, just like what you did, I knew that even though I could, we had flipped our own house. We're very handy. We grew up in handy families. There's a difference between knowing that you can do something, especially when I was a licensed pest control servicer. And so I knew that I could take care of that, but having to get out of that DIY mindset and say, hey, I'm going to empower the tenant to take care of this. I'm going to bring on a property manager, whatever that looks like. And then as we got larger buildings under our portfolio, there's no way you could self-manage the buildings that we have, especially when they're out of state. So learning how to manage a property manager was the next stage in my evolution. And now we're to the point where I'm learning more how to choose investments and choose operators so I could be more hands-off, either as a consultant or as a completely passive investor. So there's a progression that we all go through, and you're describing something very similar. So when you got to that point where you realize like, hey, I need to be more of I need to manage the manager rather than the property and the tenants directly. And they take us forward to when you made that realization, and between that and today, what your lives looked like as you were figuring out what you were going to niche down in the real estate space or the entrepreneurial space.
Yeah, so one thing that I wished I knew or realized earlier in my life was I wish that, I guess it's different points in your life. So when you're younger, money is more valuable to you. When you become older, time is more valuable to you. And when you're in your 20s, you're cheap about everything. Like, that's probably why the DIY culture existed because everyone was, or a huge part of the population at the time was just being cheap, right? We weren't ready to pay for certain things or services because we thought it was better if we did it ourselves. And I think as a hobby, that's great, but as a business, that's such a terrible idea because you are taking so long to figure out anything that by the time that you get anywhere or by the time that you should be using to strategize or work on the big things or big things that will actually move your business, you're like so exhausted that it may be years before you actually get to that point. So that's something that I wish that I understood in my early part of my real estate journey. And something that's different now is that if we can pay for it and get it serviced by someone else and it's something that doesn't bring joy into my life, then I'm going to do it. And we're probably late to the game. So very easy example is doing grocery delivery and pickup.
Yeah.
I know I'm like 3 years behind the ball game. I know it started in COVID, but I've always enjoyed to an extent like picking my vegetables and I always took pride in that. But now it's getting to a point where it's tampering with my effectiveness, because by the time you go to the grocery store, you're like tired and you're waiting the checkout line. Why not hire someone else to do it if you can afford it? Another example is laundry. If you love laundry, please come to my house and do it, because that's something that we don't absolutely love to do. And so you can find the similar thought process and apply to your own business. And I think because of that, I'm able to focus and strategize on our business and move our business forward. And that's how I'm able to do and manage working our 9 to 5 and then work our business in the evenings and the weekends. And it's not easy. It's something that we're sacrificing, I think, because part of it is we're giving up some time with our friends and family and our children so that we can ultimately, the goal is to live a passive lifestyle where we're not having to do things that we don't want to. It's basically living life on our own terms, and that's where we want to go. But you have to put in the work to get there. And right now we're in the work.
Yeah, so you're in the sacrifice years right now. It doesn't have to be 100% sacrifice, but there are shaving off of the edges. I remember one time when my daughter was little, we had a box of Oreo cookies in the pantry, and I think I was going to make some kind of dessert cheesecake or something with them. And I went to go pull them out, and all the Oreo edges were missing. And I thought, it's just this package must have been squished or crushed or something, that all of these little edges are broken. And she didn't tell me until years later, I think she was in college, where she said, "Mom, I used to get into those packages of Oreos and I would eat all around just the edges so that you wouldn't notice. And you just thought that you had a broken package of Oreos." And so what I try to do is like that, eat the edge of the Oreo sacrifice, where I am chewing around the edges, but my kids don't really notice, because I'm trying to maximize the time that I spend with them to make sure that it's visible, that they understand what's going on, and that the time that I'm actually working on my business are things when they don't really need me or when they're else somewhere. It's kind of like working while your little ones are napping. And so it can be a sacrifice, but I think it's really important that we balance the amount of sacrifice with the future. As investors, we tend to really prioritize delayed gratification and the future rewards of investing now. And that's just part of our investor personality. But at the same time, I have to remind myself, like, today is the day, seize the day, carpe diem, and all of that. And I just remember, just eat off the edges of the Oreos. So hopefully the kids don't completely notice that mom is missing or dad is missing. So it sounds like you are mastering the gentle art of balancing the future with the present.
I love the Oreo analogy. And there's days where I feel like I have my game on. We designate a certain part of the day, 6 to 9, like family time, but it's a business. And when things happen, emergencies happen, and you have to address them. But it's not a perfect system. There's days where you push and pull, family gets more, family gets less. And there's days where you're just so frustrated. And I think to be honest, you wonder if your why is not strong enough, you wonder in why you're doing the things that you're doing or why you're sacrificing. But it's certainly a balance between, like you said, carpe diem and building your future. Like if you were to pass tomorrow, would you have felt that you lived a fulfilled life? And if you did it, if you lived till you're like 100, do you have enough runway in your life to be able to live up to that? So it's, I don't know, life's a struggle, but we live it.
Yeah, I said something to somebody recently where I said life is tricky. And then I realized, like, tricky is actually a fun word. It's like a magic trick or something that somebody does to please the crowd at a party. And I thought, why don't I just turn it around and say, instead of life is tricky, I just say life is tricky. Like, it's surprising, it's fun, you can be spontaneous. And so that's really helped me to look at life as more of an adventure and a learning experience rather than a struggle, even though it is still a struggle. It's like when you're trying to get rid of a bad habit and you have to replace it with a good habit. And when you notice yourself thinking or being tempted to do that bad habit, you have to consciously remind yourself, no, we're going to replace it with this new good habit. So for me, saying that life is hard, life is life, I've actually just started saying life is tricky or life is fun, because it reminds me of my word of 2023, which is to be more playful. And that's really helped me to balance a little bit better, that the time that I am spending in the present should be fun and playful rather than always a sacrifice for the future. And I know people who are totally the other way around. Like the entrepreneur mindset is more like hustle today. If I need more money, I'll just go make more. And I'm only like a part-time entrepreneur. I'm more of an investor. And it sounds like that's the same for you as well.
I love that analogy. So it's almost like a roller coaster. Parts of it is really fun, parts of it is really scary, but usually when you get off the ride, most people enjoy it. So it's all perspective.
Yeah, that is a great analogy because one of the reasons we like roller coasters is because they scare us. And so life can be like a roller coaster, ups and downs, but even on a roller coaster, even the scary parts are still awesome. And so just reminding myself that's I'm gonna have to write that one down. Great perspective. I am wondering a couple of things as we're talking. Do you both work W-2 jobs, and is he part of the Sweet Life business, or is he just working and the business is yours? How do you divide the labor between the jobs, the business, and the kids?
Lots of communication. So he does work a W-2 as well. And I mentioned earlier, we're also managing two businesses. So one is our property management, where we're managing our single families, and then our Sweet Life, which is our multifamily business. Both are completely different. And so he's more focused on certain parts of the business. So we've talked about, hey, actually, it's been really difficult to trying to figure out. And I think the fun part in being co-business owners with each other is that I think I've learned more about him in the past couple years than I maybe knew early on in our dating scene. And so he's really good at XYZ. I'm really good at BC. And so we're like, okay, we actually started a tradition at the beginning of every year where we strategize on what our goals are. And we follow Jesse Itzler's model where you come up with this really one huge impossible goal that you want to try to accomplish. And we come up with one and a couple of other things to make our life more interesting, the fun, the thrill, 10 other things that we want to do the year. And so we plan it out. So it's like part business strategy, part life goals. And that has been really good for us. So now we know what our lanes are. We know what we're really good at. We know what we're working towards. And we'll have periodic touch points throughout the year, maybe quarterly or so, AKA date nights. And we'll see, hey, are we progressing or are we not? Are we meandering from what we really are trying to get to? And I think in this day and age, it's really easy to veer off course. And I think through our first year of our Sweet Life multifamily business, we wanted to do 100 different things in which we only had capacity to do maybe 10. And so through that, we're still learning and we're still trying to figure it out, but we're able to narrow down what we really want to do and what we're really good at.
So that's what reminds me. I remember what the example that you gave earlier was when the grocery delivery first became a thing, and I didn't even have time to go to the grocery store and do the pickup. And so I recognized there's a store that did the pickup that was right on the commuter trail from when my husband was coming home from work from downtown back to our house. And so I would put the order in and he would pick it up on his way home from work. He'd just sit there in the parking lot and they'd load it up and he'd come home. And so it's just finding out these like little life hacks that make things work, or the hybrid pickup where instead of waiting in the parking lot for my pickup, I would go in and I would pick out my own vegetables because sometimes, like you're right, like they don't do a very good job. And so by the time I get through the checkout line, I hold things because I let them pick out everything, canned goods, packaged goods, whatever, it's all the same, right? But I would go and pick out my own stuff and then they would load up the rest of it. And so just finding these like little hybrid tips and hacks and tricks so you can balance like your work life, your married life, your parental life, your business life, all of that. So I love that description that you gave of how you divide and conquer. It's not a perfect system, it's always evolving, but the point is that you're focused on it and you're intentional about it, and as you continue to refine and improve it, and then your life will change and you need to refine it again. It's just a constant process of just making sure that you're doing things as efficiently as possible and still balancing like your mental health. We could all do a better job if we just didn't get so tired all the time.
That's right. And I think we owe it not only to ourselves, but to our partners and our families to just check in with yourself and seeing, are you okay? And I love that there's such a huge mental healthness movement that's more common now. And I don't know, I think that's amazing.
The entrepreneurial culture, especially the real estate business, whether they're investors or entrepreneurs, I always try and make that distinction. A real estate investor is somebody who has their money out working for them. A real estate entrepreneur is somebody who's running a real estate business like a property management company or a multifamily company. But what I found is the positivity And the focus on mental health and mental clarity, personal development is key to professional development. It's really changed my life. This network of associating with people like yourself who are just out there doing it. And that's really what I want to share through this podcast. It's that inspiring story of being able to think about life and think about big, scary goal, like you mentioned, and being able to just figure out, okay, now what do we need to do to get there? Whether it's just living the normal life or living a huge life that's very different, it doesn't really matter. It's our life and we get to decide what to do with it, and just being around positive people who make us feel like we're not crazy, that these goals are reasonable and attainable, even though maybe not mainstream. That if we just can surround ourselves with the trailblazers who've already done it and just copy what they're doing, it doesn't have to be mainstream. It just has to mean that we find somebody who's doing it, somebody to inspire us, somebody to help us, somebody to give us advice, and mostly just people who are going to be supportive of that journey. Sometimes you have to seek them out. They're not common around just in your daily life, in your workplace, your neighborhood, or wherever, but they're out there, and just associating with people like listening to the podcast or going to meetups and things like that. I found that to be incredibly helpful to keep my mental health in a state where I recognize that this path that I'm going down is useful and it's real. And it's just not just some pipe dream, crazy dream that we had. And so take us like to today as you're looking towards your future. What needs to happen in your current business where you can jump into that future life where you are living a more passive income lifestyle and the sacrifice years are winding down? Not that we ever arrive, it's always a journey, but what does that transition to the next phase of your life look like right now?
So the reason why we started real estate as kind of our second avenue of income was, I think, one, I think my parents always did it. And so I was like, okay, let's just see what's going on there. But really, the primary factor, what really solidified why we had to keep doing this, is because of the industry that I'm currently working in, and that's the energy industry. And so my husband has been in 3 downturns, and I've been in 2. And being in a corporate environment, really appreciate my job and the benefits and everything and the experience that I've gained from it. But you start to see how easy it is for you to just be a number in those situations. And lately we've seen a lot of tech layoffs and
Yep.
some other things. And so this having real estate income or whatever income that anyone's that's interested in really helps provide a little bit more security in terms of where the income source is coming from. And so that's why we've continued on. And having been in one recently a couple years ago, to me, it's even more important now to continue that and to educate anyone that's interested in knowing that. So my parents didn't know about passive income. Like, they only knew about, we do the work, we're going to work it, and if we're not doing it, then we're not making money. And so they've never really invested. Everything was hands-on to them. And so that's a really different generational mind shift that I want to kind of make sure that anyone that wants to know is available, and that the way that your parents did something does not mean is the only way that it can be done. And even though I know, like, when my girls are grown up, the way that we are doing something now, I know it's going to be completely different from when it's their time to figure out their lives. And when in 20, 30, maybe 10, I'm hoping years when do retire, that would be amazing. My ideal day would be to wake up, do yoga, walk out to a nice sunny beach, and I don't know, go to a farmer's market or be in a farmer's market and do some mentoring and educating. One of the programs that I'm actually in right now is I'm actually in a course right now that teaches me how to be a board member for a nonprofit organization. And so it's actually a 2-month course where they'll actually help pair me with another organization within the area that I live in. And that's my way to give back. And that's just something I'm really passionate about, which is just mentoring and coaching. And that's something I hope to be able to do, just more volunteer work and help people in the future.
That sounds fantastic. I would love if we can maybe share some more information about that in the show notes, because that's something that I have been wanting to do, and I'm looking for people who can guide me through that. So, listener out there, if you are on a board or on a board for a nonprofit please reach out and let us know how we can get more involved in this. And for me, it's the same as what you're saying. We want more time to be able to volunteer and to give back. And right now, I feel like you and I are still kind of with the little kids and still really focusing on being basically full-time parents. But as my kids are teenagers and we're starting to turn our attention more to, let's go down and volunteer at the Humane Society or at a local charity garden and things like that, where they can see that life isn't just about getting more stuff, or life isn't even about getting more time to spend on doing the things that you want to do, your own hobbies, your own interests, but it's also about helping others. And then secondly, board experience can be pretty valuable. My husband and I, he has a background in tech startups and I have a background now in fund management, financial services, fund managements. And I think that we could be valuable voices on boards and it would actually be another stream of income. So you're talking about having multiple streams of income. When you give up your W-2 positions, it's reducing those streams of income. And it's a big pay cut for most of us when we finally make that transition. And most of us do it before we have quite replaced our income, because it frees up our time to go out and then create more multiple streams of income. So I think that ability to volunteer, to give back, and also double that up with the ability to serve on maybe some paid board positions would be a great way for people who are making that transition from their professional life into their passive income life, where they still need to bridge that gap with different sources of income. So thank you for bringing that up. I think it's really valuable. It would love to get more information about that after the show and see if that's something that myself and also our listeners can get more involved in.
And I think the end goal would be, or at least for me, would be to leave the earth slightly better, hopefully a lot better, but my standards might be a little low at the moment, but
Yeah.
leave Earth a little bit better than how I entered it. And I'm starting to recognize where my strengths are so that I can help whatever organization that needs it. And I think just recognizing that in itself has been a bit of a journey for me. And so hopefully I can help others in the process.
I think that for most of the people that I talk to in this industry that I interview on this program, it's all about giving back and getting our lives to the point where we have the mental energy, the mental clarity, the physical energy to really get into giving back, because it brings us so much joy and pleasure. And we recognize the people in our lives, especially maybe our young lives, who have sacrificed a lot so that maybe they could leave the world a little bit of a better place through us, and then to be able to pay that forward. It's a huge goal and dream of ours. And a lot of times it just gets pushed to the back of the priority list because we have jobs that are taking time or are stressful. We have kids that are taking time or are stressful. And even though we love our jobs and we feel like we're giving back and we love our kids and we wouldn't do it any other way, it does rob our mental and emotional energy from really being able to give back. So I know for a lot of us, that passive income lifestyle, what drives us is to get to that point where we can spend at least a good portion of our available time on giving back. And that could be just showing other people how to live a passive income lifestyle. It could be actual volunteering with people who are less fortunate. It could look like all sorts of things. And that's the thing, is we get to pick, but I find that a very common thread. That's something that we all want to do. So can you tell us a little bit about a passive income adventure that you would like to have, whether it's a personal or a business, like a bucket list item, like something you wouldn't be able to do if you hadn't made the decision to pursue this kind of alternative course of life?
So I actually took my kids to Disney World for the first time last year. And in comparison, when I was young, I don't think we went until I was probably around 10 or 12. And I guess our financials were really different when I was young and compared to now. So I'm very fortunate that I have the opportunities to invest passively and have additional sources of income to help supplement some of the things. And Disney World is not cheap by far. It is probably one of the most amazing things that I was able to experience. And I think I wanted to do it. So it was like one of my bucket list things I wanted to do with my kids. As soon as my daughter was born, I was like, can't wait to take her to Disney World. But we waited until she was 5. And I don't want to say I did it all out, but it was pretty nice. Like, we stayed on site, we bought all the cheesy gifts, we did all the restaurants, like anything that you could do. I like booked it, and unfortunately my charged it on my husband's credit card, so I didn't see the final bill. But the additional passive income really helped I don't want to say subsidize, but helped cover a lot of that too. So it wasn't a big issue in terms of what we wanted to do. And it was just one of the most beautiful experiences that I could have, just seeing my daughter seeing the princesses in person. Like I was enamored, she was enamored, the dads were enamored. They are so beautiful, but being able to see the reaction on your children's face of seeing their heroes live is priceless. And I really doubt they'll react like that when they're 10 or 12, but at 5, they certainly are. And it's something that I'll never be able to, like, you'll never be able to do that unless you had the means to do that when they're young. And so, fortunately, we've been able to have additional income for so long that it wasn't a hard ask to do that. And so we so I guess the future idea or concept is we love experiences. So just being able to bring them and experience some of the things that I haven't had a chance to experience young and see them experience it is on my bucket list.
That was something I learned the hard way. And you have learned it at a much younger age than I did, where I was working a little part time mother cottage business, stay at home mom business. I was a graphic designer, online courses, was a wedding and real estate photographer for many years. And we would use the income from that business to then go and take some family vacations. We did Disney, we did a couple of things, go see the grandparents, some fun stuff. And instead, what I wish I had done is more like what you're doing, where you're taking that money that you're making off of your business, you're going and investing it, and then you're by using the income from the investments to buy the luxuries, which is Warren Buffett said that a long time ago. I guess I just didn't get the memo. That was the way we were supposed to be doing it, increasing our streams of income and then buying luxuries or these bucket list items off of our income stream that we're creating. And you don't have to wait until the point where, all right, now we're retired on our passive income. Now life starts. So the example that you just set of saying, let's get this ball rolling and we can start enjoying the benefits of this really quickly. Because I think on the show, I focused a lot about the hard parts in between and how we get there and having to reduce your lifestyle and live below your means and invest as much as you possibly can. And it just sounds like a lot of sacrifice for most people. But sometimes I forget to talk about the fun things that we have already been able to reap the benefits of by just increasing our income stream and using some of the investment cash that comes off of it so that we can go do some fun stuff and not completely sacrifice our kids' young years. So thank you for sharing that experience and kind of reminding us that this is not a grind. This is supposed to be fun. And what we're working towards, we can actually enjoy little glimpses of that and pieces of that right now, as long as we do it wisely and don't completely trade tomorrow for enjoyment today. There has to be a balance there. So it's just like balancing your time with all of the different roles. It's also balancing your streams of income and balancing your investment income so that you can enjoy a little now and hopefully continue to enjoy a little bit more later. So how do you do that balance of deciding when you have little kids like that, making a decision, we're going to go and take this trip or make this journey versus just completely throwing it all to the future and sacrificing too much today?
You really have to consider if you were to no longer be here on earth tomorrow, would you have felt like you lived a fulfilled life versus, and you also have to plan if you were to pass on 20 or 30 years or 50 or at 100, what would your life look like? It's definitely a balance. You have to live your life knowing both, because whenever people live a life that they feel that they won't ever die or death is going to be 30, 40 years from now, I think you behave a lot differently versus if you feel like you might die tomorrow. And I think the perspective is really different. And so the reason why we're able to accomplish as much as we have with the kids and everything is because we are really focused and we are very intentional with the time that we have dedicated to our business and the time that we're dedicated to our family. It's like we're going to try to go all out between these hours for our kids once they go down to bed, and then 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 hours post dedicated business or whatever. And you become really effective that way when you change your perspective, when you feel like you don't have a limitless amount of days or hours or years. Because I think when you're young, like I mentioned earlier, time is cheap. But once you hit a certain age, you realize that money is cheap and time is really valuable. So just putting it in that perspective, it changed the way that you do things.
I told my husband this once. I said, I've never once put down the money for a vacation or something like that and then thought about that money ever again.
Yeah.
Even during the days when we weren't investing, when we were trying to support 6 kids on a much smaller income, when we decided to make the splurge or take the plunge, the experience was always more valuable than the money that we spent. And obviously, we're not encouraging spend money on vacations and not be able to pay your light bills, but to manage your day-to-day lifestyle expenses to the point where you do have some left over to invest and you do have some left over to pay for some great experiences. They don't all have to be expensive. It could just be taking a walk with your kids. But at the same time, some of those big ticket items are so much fun. And my kids talk way more about Disneyland than they do about walking the dog with me. Honestly, let's just be real here. And they're always asking like when we can go back. And hey, if I read Harry Potter, will you take me to Harry Potter World? Like the kids want these types of experiences, and listening to them and being able to see what lifestyle they want, and also watching them when we go and volunteer somewhere, we're helping somebody. I just can't put those moments off until later when life is right or life is better, you have more money. Yeah. So remembering like the future is the future and you only have the now, I think is a really powerful statement. We're dividing our time and our attention between now, the future, and maybe even the past. If you have some past things you need to work out, some lessons that you need to learn from things that happen, it's all a balancing act. So it's very clear that you're actually pretty good at that. And because you are so intentional about it, do you ever feel like you're actually not that good at it? Like you're drowning sometimes because you're intentional about balancing those priorities with both income and time?
Like any true investor, entrepreneur, mom, woman of anything, 100%. I think part of the innate feeling is that you feel like you're never doing enough. And I think I'm learning, I haven't fully accepted that being just yourself, the way that you are, being able to accomplish what you can accomplish is 100% perfect.
Yes.
And that's very hard to fully accept with like deep down. I'm not fully convinced of that, but I'm trying to get there.
It happens. It hasn't fully happened for me yet, but I remember women saying when they turned 50, they realized like they no longer cared about whatever other people thought of them. Sometimes they didn't even care what their own kids thought of them. I'm a mom, I did my best. And I never really I believed what they were saying, but I couldn't fathom what that would actually feel like. But the closer I get to 50, the more glimpses of that I get, that you do get to a point where you're just recognizing that you're an imperfect person doing your best and you're still awesome and you don't really care what other people think about you. You only care about helping people. You don't care what they think about you. Does that make sense? So as you approach 50, it really does start to become more of a reality. You get more and more glimpses of it. So it does happen. I'm seeing it happen in my own life and I'm actually really excited, and it helps me to focus more on ways where I can accelerate that. Not where I don't care what people think about me. That's like a sociopathic type of thing, right? But where I only care what I can do for people, how I can help people, and what they think about me as a person really doesn't matter as long as I feel like I am doing what I can to leave the world a little bit of a better place. So I'm getting to that point with my kids too. I told them, I said, you remember when you realized that I was just like a normal person and I didn't have all the answers and I really wasn't that great? They're like, yeah. I was like, okay, you could maybe try to disagree for just a minute. I said, as you become adults, it's the same realization for me. Your kids are so young and have this limitless potential. And then they grow up and they're just people. And I'm really struggling with that in my life when I'm watching my older teenagers and my young adult children, that they're just people. And the same forgiveness that I'm asking from them for not being an amazing mother, I'm actually having to realize that they're just normal people too. And really reaching that new level in our relationship has actually been one of my bucket list items, and something that I now have time to think about, focus on, get therapy for, because I don't have to spend all my time working and trying to do this endless balancing, juggling act. Like life actually is slowing down right now, that give me the chance to really focus on some of those things that we don't make time for when it is more hectic. So it happens. I know right now it feels like it will never happen when your kids are this little, but it will happen. And you're doing all the right things that make sure that your present life is great and worth living, and that your future life is just going to keep getting better and better. So thank you for sharing your journey with me today. I want to make sure that the listener knows how to get in touch with you after the show. And more importantly, I always ask, why should we get in touch with you after the show?
So you can find me on our website at SuiteLifeMF.com. That's SuiteLifeMF. And if you go on our website, there's a free guide. So if you're interested in passively investing into commercial real estate, specifically apartments, we have a free guide that you can download and see what we're about and why we do it. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'd love to talk to you, see if you have any goals that I can help you attain. I'd love to share, I'd love to mentor, I'd love to help anyone in their either real estate or entrepreneurial journey. Please learn from me because I've been told I've been a great mentor and love just sharing and just educating people because there's always a better way and there's always an easier way. And unfortunately, I was hard headed and I always did it the way that I knew how to do it or figured it out. But there's better ways to do it, and we don't have to make life as difficult as it sometimes can be.
No reinventing the wheel here. And you're no beginner at this either. You actually have an impressive track record and portfolio. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we currently have $100 million worth of assets under management, and that's over 3 properties in Dallas and Houston. And we're really excited. We closed our first property in December 31st of 2021. So that was very wild. And yeah, it was crazy. So we've been in the A markets, the C markets, or sorry, A class and C class, and they've been a wild ride. And it's been fun. I really enjoy running our business and growing it and love to talk to anyone that wants to talk about real estate.
Yeah, one of the things I love about the multifamily space is I feel like it's helping my family and helping us build wealth and helping us build a passive income lifestyle, but it is also helping the communities where we're managing because we're creating safe places, clean places for families to live and spend time together. And we have an amazing opportunity to help make those families' lives better as well as our own. So I'm sure that you share in that sentiment that it's very rewarding, even though it can be time consuming and grueling. It is extremely rewarding to know that you're creating great places for people to live and families to spend time together.
That's right.
Thank you so much for coming in, Anna. I feel like the discussion of female entrepreneurs and female investors and the pressure that we feel to manage our time and be better and better and better was a great discussion that a lot of people are going to relate to. And we want to help you get to that point faster. You're going to be able to make your own mistakes, but if you can find some great people in your network, we may be able to lessen the impact from that or warn of things that are coming. I know I have definitely benefited from that greatly in my investing journey, where I'm able to watch people who are a little bit ahead of me and say, oh, well, they're running into this problem. Let me see if I can head that off at the pass. And so we love to give back. I think what you said about being a teacher and loving to mentor other people is a gift, and we need that itch scratch. So please reach out to us after the show and help us to help you so that you can go on your next passive income adventure. Thank you, Anna.
Thanks, Emma.
I love having those kinds of discussions because it's been a real struggle of mine over the years to be able to balance what I'm doing today, because I'm an investor and I tend to always want to put everything off to the future, of how to just take a step back sometimes and enjoy the fruits of our labor right now while our kids are still little, while they're still at home. And even with me, half of them out of the house, being able to continue on that journey where we can be present for our kids right now. I've also had to learn some lessons about how to go back into the past and reparent or repair some of the mistakes that we've made and communicate how we would do things differently if we could go back and do things differently. And so being able to balance the past, present, and the future is a skill definitely worth getting. And I have really learned how to do that through my network of fellow investors and entrepreneurs, because the level of abundance and positivity in that network has been not only mind-boggling to me, but definitely life-changing. So if you want to jump into our network, we would love to be in your network. Please reach out to Anna and myself after the show. You can get a hold of me at my website, highrise.group/content. We have lots of stuff going on over there. We've got meetings that we do every week that are free, where you can network or we can look at deals and figure out how to pick a good investment. We've got a couple of open investments right now that you can jump into if you're an accredited investor. And we also have a link to our social media channels where you can follow along on our passive income adventures. Thank you for joining us today, and I will see you on the next episode.